everyone. Well, we're looking at Proverbs today for the next 2 weeks. And it makes me wonder, have you read much of Proverbs? I read Proverbs with Jackie, one of the women from our evening service a couple of years ago. And actually, we really struggled a bit knowing how to read it. We ended up reading a chapter at a time because it was a natural break and you need to break somewhere. But a lot of the time we were struggling to know how these chapters came together. So when I had the chance to do some further study on the book of Proverbs, I didn't exactly jump at it, but it was quite helpful. And so today I'm passing on my top 3 tips for reading Proverbs. Firstly, knowing the structure really helps. For me, just to help get my head around the book, being aware of how it fits together is really helpful. Very simply, Proverbs is broken down into 3 main sections. Chapters 1 to 9 are the setting, poems contrasting wisdom and folly, and they can be read as chapters as a whole. They flow and they usually make sense when read. Chapters 10 to 29 then are full of sentence proverbs. So when you read verse 1, sometimes doesn't naturally flow into verse 2, and that's okay. It's not what was intended. Sometimes you do see some connections within a chapter or within a section, so it's not completely disjointed. And each verse, each proverb is in its place for a reason. The writer or editor could have put the topics together so that all the proverbs about speech could have been chapter 10, or the proverbs on friendship could have been chapter 11, etc. But they didn't. So reading each proverb in its context is good. But generally speaking, they are sentence proverbs. And I think this is where Jackie and I struggled the most when we read a chapter at a time, because we expected there to be more continuity. And then the final 2 chapters, chapters 30 and 31, form an ending. There's more poems by Agar and Lemuel. And you notice some of the themes that were introduced in the first 9 chapters reappearing here. Proverbs 31 is that somewhat famous story of the noble wife that can leave women everywhere feeling bad. They don't even come close to living to her standard. But perhaps when Proverbs is read in its entirety, we see that maybe that's not the point of the passage, but it rather draws our eyes to wisdom personified. And so that brings me to my next point, my next top tip. Proverbs is all about wisdom. Well, that's probably well known, but what is wisdom? Wisdom is fixing our eyes on God and seeing and therefore knowing God. That's what makes us wise. This wisdom is what we'll need to help us to understand Proverbs a bit more, because some of the Proverbs are near exact opposites. An example for you, Proverbs chapter 26 verse 4 says, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you yourself will be just like him." But Proverbs 26 verse 5, one verse later, says, "Answer a fool according to his folly, or he will be wise in his own eyes." So there is a time that is right and wise to answer a fool, and a time when it is right and wise to not answer them. Proverbs are not intended to be absolute statements that are true in all contexts, and the wise person will know when to apply a proverb to the right situation. We get this wisdom by knowing God. My third top tip in reading Proverbs is to read Proverbs. I think because if you're like me, reading poetry is not my strong suit, it just makes that bit harder. And then trying to understand links between each verse, which aren't always there, it's hard work. And so you just keep going back to your favorite book of Ephesians. But let me recommend Tim Keller's devotional book, The Way of Wisdom. I read this last year as I was getting into Proverbs, and it provides you with a short passage from Proverbs each day, just a few verses. And then Keller writes what has impacted him from those verses with a prayer you can follow at the end. Because having the wisdom gained by knowing God more, having this wisdom to apply the Proverbs that are true for some contexts and not others, only works if you know the Proverbs in the first place.